Ladies and gentlemen, we'll continue with the official portion of tonight's event momentarily. As you finish your meals, please direct your attention to the center of the mess hall for a performance by our cadet gospel choir.
Hallelujah, salvation and glory, honor and power unto the Lord our God. For the Lord our God is mighty. Yes, the Lord our God is omnipotent. The Lord our God, He is wonderful. Help me sing hallelujah. Hallelujah. Salvation and glory, honor and power unto the Lord our God. For the Lord our God is mighty. Yes, the Lord our God is omnipotent. The Lord our God, He is wonderful. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Salvation and glory, honor and power unto the Lord our God. For the Lord our God is mighty. Yes, the Lord our God is omnipotent. The Lord our God, He is wonderful. All praises be to the King of Kings and the Lord our God. He is wonderful. All praises be to the King of Kings and the Lord
Thank you very much to our Cadet Gospel Choir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now proceed with the official portion of tonight's dinner. As you finish your meals, I kindly ask you remember to redon your face mask for the remainder of this event. Lieutenant General Williams, Brigadier General Buzzard, Brigadier General Jebb, Command Sergeant Major Killingsworth, Dr. Peterson, Mr. Anderson, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow cadets. Welcome to the dinner and celebration in honor of Lieutenant Henry O. Flipper. Unfortunately, due to the impacts of COVID-19, not all cadets could be physically present in the mess hall tonight. Gathered here this evening are members of the 4th class who are being introduced to this special West Point tradition and will hopefully carry with them the many lessons of growth and resiliency as they continue with their 47-month experience. Also joining in person is the 1st class, who are here to honor this year's Flipper Award recipient, a fellow classmate, and to embrace the legacy of Henry O. Flipper here at USMA one last time before embarking on new and exciting leadership opportunities at their recently selected post assignments. Although the 2nd and 3rd classes could not attend this event in person, they're all participating in tonight's festivities via our live digital event. Also joining us virtually this evening are some very special guests. I would like to recognize and give extraordinary thanks to Reverend Ken Davis and the members of the Flipper family who have been an essential part of this tradition since 1977. We are truly honored and humbled by their unwavering support and dedication to the United States Military Academy. Please join me in a round of applause to recognize the Flipper family. Tonight, we are celebrating the legacy of Lieutenant Flipper, the first African American to graduate from the United States Military Academy. He was also the first African American to become a commissioned officer in the United States Army and command regular troops. Throughout his career, starting as a cadet, he encountered great adversity, not because of his character or competence, but simply because of how he looked. Despite great difficulties, Cadet Flipper resolved to live his life as an example of courage and strength, to rise above the common level with dignity and integrity. Tonight, please take a few moments to reflect on his legacy and determine what it means to live and serve courageously as he did. Please turn your attention to one of the screens in your section.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow.
Henry Flipper's story is for all of us, no matter who we are. It doesn't matter our race, our gender, our creed, our color, our nation of origin, or anything like that. It doesn't matter. His story is a story for all of us. His story is of resilience, dedication, determination, courage, endurance, patience, self-restraint, hope, faith, and forgiveness, and just about every other value and virtue that we want all of our leaders and fellow human beings to have.
African American History Month gives us time to recognize one of our own, one of our trailblazers, Henry O. Flipper. He was a former slave and the first African American to graduate from West Point. For his entire education, no one would speak to him. 4 years of solitude and inequality.
To help to tell the story, and it is a phenomenal story. It has really extraordinary high accomplishments and happy points, and some really low and really disgusting things that we would never want to see again.
Henry O. Flipper persevered and in 1877 graduated from West Point, earning a commission as a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Cavalry. He also became the first African-American officer to lead the Buffalo Soldiers of the 10th Cavalry.
Please swallow your pride.
I did not consider that if our own Buffalo soldier did not endure the hardships he did on this very ground we walk today to become the first African American to graduate in 1877, I would never have been able to march onto the plane on our day or to jettison my cover into the air on graduation day.
Who knows where he would have gone had he stayed in uniform for longer than those 5 years. But the impacts he made during that time were much broader than just on the military, to be sure. Truly a trailblazer.
Flipper served leaders who held his skin color against them. One of his leaders asked him to watch over a safe and then accused him of embezzling government funds. And he was found guilty of conduct unbecoming of an officer and a gentleman and sentenced to be dismissed from the service of the United States. For the rest of his life, Flipper contested the charges and fought to regain his commission. He was not pardoned until 1999 by President Bill Clinton, 59 years after his death.
Today's ceremony is about a moment in 1882 when our government did not do all it could do to protect an individual American's freedom. It is about a moment in 1999 when we correct the error and resolve to do even better in the future. The man we honor today was an extraordinary American. Henry Flipper did all his country asked him to do.
If you need help, yeah, call on me, friend. Yeah, I'll show you the way. Yeah, call on me, sister. Yeah, I'll show you the way. Lean on me, you can lean on. So you can lean
Lieutenant General Williams, Brigadier General Buzzard, Brigadier General Jebb, Command Sergeant Major Killingsworth, Dr. Peterson, Mr. Anderson, Captain Reynolds, distinguished guests, ladies, gentlemen, and fellow cadets. This evening, it is my privilege to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Joseph B. Anderson. Joseph B. Anderson, Jr. graduated from the United States Military Academy in 1965. During his military career, Mr. Anderson led and inspired troops as an infantry officer in the 82nd Airborne Division and served 2 tours of duty with the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam. Mr. Anderson and the infantry platoon he commanded in Vietnam were subjects of the highly acclaimed documentary film, The Anderson Platoon. The documentary has been shown in more than 20 countries and has won several prizes, to include the Oscar of the Academy Awards and an Emmy for the Best Documentary Film of 1967. Additional assignments included aide-de-camp to 2 general officers, assistant professor of the Department of Social Sciences at West Point, and special assistant to Secretary of Commerce. Mr. Anderson's military awards include 2 Silver Stars, 5 Bronze Stars, 3 Army Commendation Medals, and 11 Air Medals. Mr. Anderson resigned his commission in 1978 after 13 years of service and early selection for promotion to Lieutenant Colonel. In 1979, Mr. Anderson joined General Motors, and in 1992, he became an entrepreneur, eventually becoming the chairman and CEO of TAG Holdings, LLC, which for several years was among the top 5 largest Black-owned businesses in the United States. As a volunteer, Mr. Anderson has served West Point AOG in various capacities since 1974, to include efforts as a diversity strategic advisor to the USMA superintendent, helping to establish the West Point Office of Diversity, Inclusion, and Equal Opportunity. In May 2016, Mr. Anderson received the Distinguished Graduate Award from the United States Military Academy at West Point, honoring him for his lifetime of achievement. And in today's rapidly evolving environment, Mr. Anderson continues to extend his influence while serving as the chairman of numerous prominent organizations and community outreach programs in Detroit, Chicago regions. Please welcome Mr. Joseph Anderson.
Thank you very much, Cadet McGinnis. General Williams, General Buzzard, General Jebb, Command Sergeant Major Killingsworth, and the Flipper family and members who are on live stream, and to the Corps of Cadets here in the mess hall and not. It's an honor for me to be here to celebrate the life of Henry Ocean Flipper and recognize our Flipper Award recipient, Cadet Marcus Wright. But before I go any further, I want to deal with something that I know is going on right now. When I was in your shoes as a firstie, and our cohort class came back, the class of 1915, General/President Eisenhower and his classmates were here. I said, man, those are some old guys. And so I say to you now, your turn is coming. As you saw on the poster with me and General Westmoreland, General Abrams, and so forth, the tagline there was, at West Point, much of the history we teach is about the people we taught. I'm going to talk about West Point and the people who were there during my area. Having read about Flipper's history and seeing the video this evening, I can personally relate to some of his experiences with racism. In the introduction of me by Cadet McGinnis, he referenced me growing up in Topeka, Kansas. Topeka is well known for the civil rights legislation, Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka in 1954, that desegregated schools in the United States. That lawsuit was about my class. I was part of those segregated schools and went K through 6 to segregated experiences. Turning this evening, I would like to expand upon the African American experience at West Point with the perspective that the more we know about our history, the more likely we are to learn from past mistakes and benefit from lessons learned. Way back then, when I entered the military academy in 1961, there were only 11 African American cadets at the academy during my plebe year. There was only one first-classman, Fred Gordon, who had the unique experience of being the only African American in his class. My class entered with 6 African Americans out of 900 new cadets. We graduated with 4 African Americans out of a graduating class of 596, the exact same attrition rate. We Black cadets were fully immersed in cadet life, but still felt relatively isolated during this period in that there were no African American officers assigned to West Point on the staff or faculty. Imagine going through such a challenging experience and not seeing an officer on the staff or faculty that looked like you. Like Flipper, our interaction with other African Americans was limited to secretaries and the mess hall personnel. My personal experience during the plebe year started off relatively well, in that during Christmas break, when all the upperclassmen departed, yes, we stayed here back in those days. When all the upperclassmen departed and our class officer assignments were announced, I was selected to be a battalion commander. During the Easter break, when the upperclassmen departed again, I was selected to be a regimental commander of one of the 2 regiments. Overall, during my first 3 years at West Point, I had a reasonably rewarding experience, starting out playing football, being the lead soloist for the Cadet Glee Club, and engaging in other extracurricular activities. One of my other extracurricular activities was to participate in Operation Crossroads Africa, where I spent the summer before my first year in Africa with 2 of my classmates. I was very surprised and extremely disappointed when I returned to experience my first class year and was told that because I had participated in this sanctioned Operation Crossroads program, I would not have the opportunity to serve in leadership role during my first year because I had not participated in the summer detail. My other 2 white classmates that went to Africa did not have the same experience, and they had the opportunity to participate in some of the programs that were made available to them. The reality was the United States Military Academy was not yet ready to have an African American in a firstie leadership role. But despite that personal setback, it is very important for me to have you understand this. I am extremely proud to say that during my 4 years at the Academy, there was not a single racial incident between myself and my classmates. After graduation, my experience with the Academy improved dramatically over my first year. In just 6 years after graduation, I was offered the opportunity to join the faculty of the Social Sciences Department. I attended graduate school and earned a couple of master's degrees before returning to the Academy to teach a course on problems of developing nations. I had additional positive Academy involvement during this period in that I also served on the Board of Trustees of the Association of Graduates that continued for a total of 15 years. Further recognition from my classmates occurred when, during one of our 5-year class reunions, I was selected to be class president for the next 5 years. One of the Black cadets that I got to know very well, 2 years behind me, was the first African-American second-generation graduate in that his father had graduated in 1941 from the Academy. Colonel James D. Fowler was only the 5th African-American graduate following Henry O. Flipper's graduation in 1877. Again, 1877 to 1941, only 3 other graduates before 1941. Unfortunately, Colonel Fowler's experience as a Black cadet was not much better than Flipper's in that he experienced a great deal of racism from his classmates. The significance of Colonel Fowler to me is that he was my first mentor in the Army. When I graduated in 1965, there were no African-American generals in the Army, none, and only 6 Black colonels. Those colonels provided a great deal of insight to me on how to be successful as a Black officer in the U.S. Army of that era. An example of Colonel Fowler's advice to me took place during the civil rights demonstrations of the early 1960s. I was having second thoughts about not being out there in the demonstrations on behalf of our race. His counsel to me was, there are plenty of black folks that can sit in the counters. Your job is to get through West Point. Upon further reflection, considering the silent treatment Flipper experienced as a cadet, what was his readiness to be a leader in the United States Army as a brand new second lieutenant and the first African American to graduate and receive such a commission? Immediately after graduation, Flipper was assigned to the all-African American 10th Cavalry while serving in Texas and what is now Oklahoma. He was involved in engineering and mining projects, including draining swamps, building wagon roads, and installing telephone lines. In 1880, he fought against the Apache chief Victorio and earned a commendation. It appears that despite his minimalized leadership development experience as a cadet, he performed well as a junior officer. When I talked to General Williams a couple of weeks ago, he shared with me the West Point Leader Development System. I am sure there was a similar process in place when I was a cadet, but it surely was not developed to the degree that is reflected in your leader development process today. As I reviewed the process, individual development of today's cadet occurs through education and training. Leadership development occurs both in practicing following as well as practicing leading. Both individual and leadership development are reinforced with a culture of character growth. The outcome of this process among graduates is that you are fully prepared to live honorably, to lead honorably, and to demonstrate excellence. Again, I am sure there was a similar process when I was a cadet. When the process was put to the test over and over in my military career and afterwards, it has never failed me. My first significant measure of the efficacy of this process occurred shortly after graduation from the academy. When our class of 1965 received our commission, it was during the early stages of the Vietnam War, and I soon found myself on the way to Vietnam. This was 1 year after graduation and followed a short first duty assignment with the 82nd Airborne Division. That's your commandant. My readiness to lead in combat was quickly tested as I found myself and my platoon in a major fight less than 2 months after arriving in Vietnam. While out on patrol with my platoon, I was given a call on the radio with instructions to travel several kilometers to a specific location on the map to see what happened to an American platoon that had been ambushed during a helicopter insertion. We received the call in the afternoon and began moving in the direction of the LZ. As darkness fell, I told my platoon sergeant to organize a platoon into a perimeter for the night. We immediately received a call from headquarters that said we were to keep moving to the LZ in the dark, which was highly unusual. We arrived at the location and immediately became engaged in a major firefight. Over the course of the next few hours, I was busy calling in artillery, keeping support flare-dropping aircraft directly overhead to keep the area lit up for us, and organizing redistribution of ammunition with the platoon when we began to run low. With the artillery support provided to us, we were able to fight off the NVA battalion and subsequently rescued the 4 people that survived the ambush. 24 had gone in initially. This major combat action led to the award of my first Silver Star. The Silver Star for Valor was awarded to me for leading a platoon. As you remember, the documentary is called The Anderson Platoon, and it's about me leading that platoon. That platoon did valorous things, even though I received the Silver Star for valorous actions. During this engagement, I had only 1 member of my platoon wounded. I have always understood that my soldiers do the fighting with me leading them to get the job done. My purpose in sharing this with you is to assure you that the training, education, and development received here at the Academy fully prepares you for such dramatic encounters. Another unique experience which is reflective of my graduating from West Point was being selected by my brigade in the 1st Cavalry Division in Vietnam to host a French film crew who wanted to do a documentary on the American experience in Vietnam. The 3-person crew stayed in the field with me for 6 weeks and filmed everything we did. As you heard, the documentary was widely acclaimed and was awarded an Oscar of the Academy Awards, as well as an Emmy for the Best Documentary in 1967. When Pierre Schoendorfer introduced me in the documentary, he referenced 3 things about me: my age, the fact that I was Black, and that I was a graduate of West Point. When Pierre came to the United States 20 years later to make a second documentary and film a reunion of the Anderson platoon, he said it was critical for him to come to West Point and film me in the environment where I received my education and leadership development. You will find it interesting to know that when we met with the Commandant of Cadets at that time, the COM was Brigadier General Fred Gordon, the lone African-American, class of 1962. And so we have progressed from 1877 with Henry Flipper, the first African-American graduate, to Colonel Fowler in 1941, the 5th African-American graduate, to 1967 and me in the Anderson platoon, to 1987 and the first African-American Commandant of Cadets, to 2018 and the first African-American Superintendent of the United States Military Academy, General Darrell Williams. After leaving the Army and becoming a civilian, Flipper distinguished himself working on engineering and surveying projects out west. He also worked in many capacities for the government. As special agent for the Department of Justice, he served as an expert on Mexico for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. He was also a special assistant to the Secretary of the Interior, along with publishing several books on legal subjects. When I reflect on my career after the Army, what stands out is the leadership and character component of my West Point education and development. While serving as a White House Fellow, I had the opportunity to be the host of my White House Fellows class luncheon with Henry Ford II, chairman of Ford Motor Company. After Mr. Ford departed, I was quite surprised to be contacted by Ford Motor Company to see if I would be interested in becoming an executive in the automobile industry. Interestingly enough, I had previously been contacted by General Motors with the same thing in mind. I made the decision to leave the Army and join General Motors as an executive in training. I was joined by an Air Force 2-star general because the automobile industry had concluded they could hire leaders of character from the military and teach them to be leaders in the automobile industry, since the steps had not been taken to do so with current Black employees. We were the first 2 African-American plant managers in General Motors. In only 18 months after leaving the Army and joining General Motors, I became plant manager over the press metal and plating operations in Pontiac Motor Division. The point I want to make is I had no background in training on how to make fenders, hoods, or bumpers for Pontiac cars, but I did know how to lead people. On that basis, General Motors gave me the opportunity for that initial leadership position. After 13 years at General Motors, I ended up running a business unit with 7,000 employees located in 3 different states, manufacturing $1 billion of automotive components. Let me return one last time to Henry Flipper and his view of being an officer and a gentleman. In his biography, he said he looked at race-based cruelty he received as beneath those who were trained to be officers and gentlemen. For you firsties sitting here today, you have had almost 4 years of leadership development at the preeminent leader development institution in the world. West Point has invested education and training in you so that you will become a commissioned leader of character. My challenge to you is to have the people in your platoon say that there were no racial incidents in your team, as I can say about my class over 55 years ago. For you plebes sitting here, my challenge is for you to say there were no racial incidents in your class, as I can say about my class 55 years ago. I hope you will accept that challenge. A similar challenge was recently undertaken by another African-American distinguished graduate, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, West Point class of 1975. Having commanded troops at every level as a general officer, this four-star general is a perfect example of how racial bias could have caused the Army to miss out on the exemplary leadership of this proven combat leader. In his congressional hearing before the Senate to become Secretary of Defense just 2 weeks ago, General Austin said that soldiers deserve a working environment free of discrimination, free of hate, free of harassment. He vowed to rid the military's ranks of racists and extremists. He wants to create a climate where every fit and willing soldier has the opportunity to serve this country with dignity. And by the way, Secretary Austin, General Austin, grew up in the same town as Henry O. Flipper, Thomasville, Georgia. I would like to close by saying that 150 years after Flipper entered West Point, African-American graduates that have followed in his footsteps have made significant contributions to West Point and to our country, and we have received a great deal from the education and leadership development received from the cadet experience at the Academy. Despite the disappointment of my first year, I would like to make a modification to the statement as I was required to make by my Beast Barracks squad leader. At that time, he required we plebes to say, everything I am and everything I hope to be, I owe it to my squad leader. I know that didn't happen to you all. Looking back over my life, I now know that everything I accomplished after coming to West Point, I owe to my parents and to the leadership development process at West Point, designed to graduate officers of character. Thank you very much, and beat Navy.
Mr. Anderson, on behalf of the United States Corps of Cadets, I would like to present to you this gift of appreciation for your inspiring words tonight. Yes, sir.
At this time, I would like to invite the Commandant of Cadets, Brigadier General Buzzard, and Cadet Marcus L. Wright to join Mr. Anderson in front of the stage for the presentation of the 2021 Henry O. Flipper Award. For demonstrating the highest qualities of leadership, self-discipline, and perseverance in the face of unusual difficulties, 2021 Henry O. Flipper Award is presented to Cadet Marcus L. Wright, Company A4, Class of 2021. Cadet Wright was born in Thomaston, Georgia, and during his time as a young child with a single mother, Cadet Wright was forced to endure extremely high levels of poverty as his family struggled to survive. Through elementary school, Cadet Wright struggled with obesity and felt that he might not ever accomplish much outside of his small town. With little money and resources, his family was forced to live in the most impoverished portion of the city, tarnished with crime and gang violence. While in high school, Cadet Wright lost numerous friends to the violence that tore through the community. Despite this hardship, Cadet Wright began to excel in both academics and athletics and became the first individual from his high school in over 30 years to earn a Division I scholarship. After receiving numerous scholarships and weighing all his options, Cadet Wright realized that his passion to lead, to serve, and to provide for others meant there was no better place to pursue his future than the United States Military Academy. While in Beast, Cadet Wright lost 2 close friends to the gang violence and several others over the course of his first 2 years at the academy. All of this weighed heavily on Cadet Wright as he struggled to continue his journey here at West Point. At an all-time low, Cadet Wright was confronted with the death of his father. This news was devastating. Rather succumbing to the hardship and giving up, he pushed himself to persevere and reinvigorate his purpose for attending the United States Military Academy. He became energized by enabling and inspiring those around him. Now, as Cadet Wright nears the end of his 47-month experience as a cadet, he has already begun to unveil the type of leader he will be after graduation. With passion and humility, Cadet Wright is spearheading efforts to establish a scholarship program at his local high school that recognizes potential and gives students like him an opportunity to excel. Cadet Wright views this as an outstanding way to give back to his community and inspire positive change. Cadet Marcus Wright exemplifies the legacy of Henry O. Flipper and serves as a role model to many. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Corps of Cadets, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance tonight, especially our guest speaker, Mr. Joseph Anderson. Thank you for joining us in celebrating the legacy of Lieutenant Henry O. Flipper. Sir, we appreciate your time with us here tonight, as well as your insightful and inspiring remarks. Before we conclude this evening's festivities, there are several other people and organizations we'd like to thank for making this evening possible. We ask that you please hold your applause till the end, and our sincere appreciation to the members of the Flipper family, our amazing audio-visual and PAO team, the Cadet Gospel Choir, and the USMA Band, the Cadet Hostess Office, and the many organizations that have made this evening a success. Particularly, we'd like to recognize the mess hall staff for all their hard work in preparing and serving tonight's excellent meal. Join me for a round of applause. Corps dismissed.